Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning, Helen. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am very good. I had a really good week this week.
Good.
How was your week?
I started out okay, but I have a toothache, which isn't too bad right now, but I found out yesterday that it's broken in the root.
Oof.
So I get to go next week to see an oral surgeon to see about removing
No. I'm
a
sorry.
miserable couple of nights.
hmm
But they put me on, it's got me started on an antibiotic, which is, you know, should help with the swelling and stuff. So
hmm People underestimate how bad mouth pain can be.
oh, I know. I mean, it starts making your ear hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Makes you feel like you have other things going on.
It's like lots of soft things. Steaks or chicken is for the next few.
Yeah. Well, I hope you get better soon, and I hope that the pain is extremely minimal. I know that that's rough, but I
Well,
definitely hope it goes quickly.
I had actually wondered if I was going to even keep my video on this morning, but I'm feeling much better. They had given me some tramadol, which is like a synthetic
Mhm.
opioid. All it's been doing is making me feel really lousy.
Yeah.
Ibuprofen and the Tylenol help better than the tramadol do, so
hmm
I won't be able to take any more of it.
Yeah. It's funny how it can really help, though. I remember when I got my wisdom teeth removed. I think I
Mhm.
just did ibuprofen. My mom did not want me to touch the codeine that they had prescribed. So yeah,
Mhm.
I just did ibuprofen after that.
Well, I can't do codeine because it gives me migraines.
hmm
Vicodin gives me migraines. I could do Percocets, but I didn't need to go that.
Right.
So we tried the tramadol. I've done tramadol in the past and didn't have any trouble with it. But I woke up last night. I was hot, sweating, nauseated, and I was like, "This is the tramadol is what's doing this."
hmm If it's the only thing that you changed in your routine, then yeah, it has to be.
So I was like, "I don't need that.
Right. Exactly.
Pain is bad enough. I didn't need everything else too.
Yeah, I understand.
It'll be better." Okay,
Get well soon. That really sucks.
thank you. Yeah, I told the dentist yesterday. I was like, I have a high tolerance for pain, so if I'm having problems,
Then it's serious.
yeah, they go, "Oh no, we believe you." I just wanted to tell you too, I appreciate all the help you give me during the HSAC meetings, keeping up with stuff. And I thought the breakout sessions went really well from what I could tell. It kind of got a little bit long on the follow up at the end, but people wouldn't follow directions, but that's okay.
Thank you. I actually really enjoy those kinds of discussions. I
Mhm.
think it's so nice to get so much feedback
Yeah.
from the community, especially I just found it interesting how like for the most part I feel like almost every group had very similar concerns,
Yeah.
which really does show that that some of the things that even we talk about in HAC meetings as needs in the community, it's very relevant because the feedback showed that um, you know, that we're pretty on the mark in terms of like talking about the things that are needed in the community. So it was a very good discussion.
Good morning, Colin.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, I suppose. So I was up to my eyeballs and I was like, oh, wait a minute. We have exec committee in the morning and I haven't called Helen to see what we've got for our agenda. Aside from planning the meeting, that's all I had. Is there anything you have that you want to add to it?
No, I don't.
So it could be a pretty short meeting then. But I should never
You
say
always
that because
say
every
that.
time I say that, we end up going for like 2 hours. Not that bad. Sorry, Eliza. We're not that bad.
Good morning, Brianna. How are you? Can't hear you if you're talking. All right. She's on the phone, I believe, so it may be the problem.
Yeah, she typed in the chat. She's a social work student from UNC.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, thank you for coming. It's good to meet you. I see that now, yes.
Let's go.
And Nicole, good to have you today. Eliza, how are you doing?
Morning. Morning. I'm doing well. Happy it's not raining today.
Yeah,
How about you?
I'm doing all right.
I like that purple room. It's a fun color.
Yeah, there's only 2 walls of purple. The other 2 are, sorry, I got distracted by a text message, are dark blue. So, yeah.
Nice.
So we need either Tarita or Jonathan here, or Russ.
Looks like Jonathan and maybe Melva joined in Teams. Just texted Russ. Lloyd is out. I just texted Russ.
And we had a mysterious package show up at the station this morning, trying to figure out who it belongs to.
Does anybody know what's in it?
Yeah, it boots, fire boots, so probably
Hmm.
belongs to the fire marshal. They order stuff sometimes, and instead of going wherever they don't realize that the address didn't get changed, the shipping address didn't get changed. So, all right, so we have 3, which means we now have a quorum. Yay!
Sorry for the delay.
That's okay. Sorry. It's just something about today for me. Like, it was quarter till, and I was thinking I could do this one more thing. I think, no, you're not, because as sure as I did, it'd be quarter after. I'd be, oh no, I forgot. So I will officially call our meeting to order, since we have 3 of us. Oh, we have 4 of us now. All right. And I'm sure Tarita will be here. Yeah.
Sharita is probably out.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, here we are. So I will call the meeting to order. Thank you, Russ, for getting the minutes out. Jonathan, did you get a chance to look at them yet?
Give me
Eliza?
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Did you get a chance to look at them?
I looked at them.
All right,
They looked good to me.
all right.
We do need to edit one thing. This is pretty funny. I used, Melissa sends me a bunch of resources to use, and I just went down the list of who was on the Zoom call. So I have, among others present, the person who came on the call and started cursing. So I probably could take them off the minutes as an attendee, because I just went right down the list. I'm like, okay, I put everybody in their slot, and Benjamin Westley was with us. So I'll pull
Yeah, that's
him
probably
right.
not even his real name.
That's
Definitely
just
not.
specific. No, I think it is. It's such a very specific name.
Oh, okay, I remember now. was
Really,
like,
I thought it was very general, which is why I didn't think it was a real name. But
I remember that now. I tend to forget unpleasant things.
Funny.
I'm gonna have a motion to accept this minutes.
looks good to me.
I'll take that as a motion. Have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, yes.
Yeah.
Minutes are approved. So now we will hand it over to Colin. Go for it.
All right, this is, I think, the big highlight of everybody's day is planning the February HSAC meeting.
Woohoo.
And other than that, let's just make sure, is there anything else besides planning the February HSAC meeting that anybody in the committee would like to go over today?
The only thing I want to mention is the positive feedback that I got from the breakout sessions that we did. It seems like it went really well, and I appreciate everybody participating in that. I was going to ask if Melissa, Colin, Melva, if y'all had any feedback from anyone else about what they thought about the process and how it went. No one's like, oh, this was a horrible thing. We should never have done this.
I haven't heard anything.
I heard positive things of being able to be included in that way and just making connections among people that may not talk to each other, but do related work.
Yeah. But just judging by the response after everybody came back into the main room, I think it went really well. People actually seemed energized afterwards, which is interesting and different.
Mhm.
So I was glad to see that. Worked out really well.
So
But that was the only thing I wanted to mention about that.
Two things that, I mean, they can be in the parking lot for future discussions, but I've asked this of Colin before, and I think there's still conversation around this. It's just, there's a lot of evaluation of the agencies doing the work, and there's an ongoing question of at what point is the COC lead agency evaluated, and how does that work? And so just at some point, it doesn't have to be today, that one, having that on our radar. And then the other question, this came because I was doing some board planning with something else, because I realized, I mean, I think, Jonathan, aren't you in like your 4th year? And I think Sharita's in her 4th year. At some point, is there succession planning we should be thinking through for these committees? Because we have such a challenge getting people on the committees. I imagine there's got to be a long landing strip for something like that. So it's not pressing, but just, I mean, if we're coming up on 4 years, we probably should be thinking through that at some point. Just a thought. I didn't want to like open that door up for you, Jonathan.
Oh, no, not at all. You caught me while I was stepping away, literally, for just a moment. I think I've been chair for a while, and certainly we do have challenge with getting folks to step into leadership positions. So I've been happy to do it, and I also certainly respect and understand that fresh blood is probably needed at some point. So I plan as a permanent member of the HSAC to continue to be involved in committee work, whether I'm in a leadership position or not, and probably at least for sake of of appearances too, it probably would be good to to rotate leaders. Of course, the chair is the one who appoints those positions, so I guess that will be up to Eliza soon. I certainly support whatever whatever the group feels is appropriate, and like I said, I plan to continue to be involved as much as I can.
And again, that's not a push for either of you. I come out of church world where like once you're on a committee, you're there till you die. So,
Yeah.
I feel like
There's nothing set aside that says you only serve a certain amount of time, is there?
Not in those
I don't think so.
committee roles. And Sharita said the same thing. She's happy to serve in that leadership role. But if somebody else wants to step up and do it, she's welcome to hand the reins over. But so far, nobody's wanted to step into either one of those roles. So,
Well, and part of the problem too is that there's so few of us on HSAC that don't have conflicts of interest. So I don't
Sure.
happen to have any. So I hope we can identify more leaders. I mean, I do. I think that can only benefit the committee and can benefit our homeless residents.
and Russ, in terms of evaluating the lead agency, I'm not sure that we as the lead agency could tell you how to evaluate the lead agency, because then we have an inherent conflict of interest of saying, we can sort of tell you, here's what HUD says the lead agency should do, and walk through those roles, and then sort of leave it to, I mean, the lead agency serves at the pleasure of the continuum of care. Every continuum of care has to select a lead agency and whatever they choose to do. So we can sort of, here's the framework of what's expected and what we do and how we do it. And then, I guess maybe the executive committee could sort of put together a framework of, here's what we think we need to evaluate. And I guess that's the question, is what's being evaluated? Is it being evaluated? Are we holding meetings according to the HUD rules? Are we submitting the consolidated applications on time and ensuring that, the monitorings that we're required to do are happening on a regular basis? I mean, those are kind of the things that we do. And a lot of the responsibilities of the lead agency is a lot of that coordination stuff. So, or is it, I guess, what is it that we'd be looking to monitor would be my question. And that's something I think we should talk through and flush out. But I think if you're going to look at monitoring the lead agency, it's important to make sure that we've got here's what's expected of a lead agency. So you know what the responsibilities and roles are. So you can say, yes, they're doing it. No, they're not doing it, or they're doing it terribly and should do it totally differently.
And I'm guessing there must be something in existence from when community development became the lead agency, because there was a prior lead agency. So there's something must exist of kind of what the expectations were. I mean, it may be very dusty and.
Yes, the interlocal agreement that establishes the HSAC sort of goes through some of the HSAC responsibilities. And then we can I did a little bit of a presentation in January for the city council, where we talked about at a high level some of the roles of the lead agency, which is really, coordinating the COC NOFO, coordinating the state ESG application, coordinating the COC can coordinate itself. Technically, the lead agency doesn't have to do it. It's just one of those things that we've ended up sort of falling on us. The coordinated entry administrative role is not part of being a lead agency. That's just one of those things that has kind of fallen on us due to it's hard to find a provider who could be a coordinated entry administrator, because when NCCH was doing it, they were running into challenges because they didn't have any teeth, for lack of a better term. If people weren't doing what was being required, then it was like, hey, city, you're the lead agency, you need to go tell them they have to do this. We're telling them, and they're just saying, yeah, we don't care, but we don't have any power to enforce anything. So we have a lot of roles, and I think maybe cleaning up what is a true lead agency responsibility and what are the other tasks that the city is doing, and why is this where it is? It may help sort of clear up some of the fog and sort of hone in on, do we need to evaluate a bunch of different things, or are we trying to lump a lot of things into one category that don't necessarily belong in that category? Happy to help as best I can, but I don't think the lead agency should be writing the evaluation tool.
Everything's going to be all fives.
I mean, it's amazing when you get to write the tool and do all that stuff. Sure.
And that's a good point, because there's been, I could see how in past years, lead agency may have needed to take on some additional roles. And I've always had a question, I guess, in the back of my mind. What is the actual role of, other than planning the agenda, of the executive committee? And what is, it seems like it should be a little more involved than it has been. Then, we're always following the lead of the lead agency, which is not always a bad thing, or maybe not even necessarily a bad thing. But I've always been a little bit confused about exactly how much we should or shouldn't be doing as the executive committee and as the HSAC and as a whole.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And I think a lot of it in other jurisdictions that I've worked in, where the lead, sort of like the staff is involved in this stuff on a day-to-day basis, and most of our HSAC members are not involved in it on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So you're kind of having people who care about the work that's being done, and but need sort of guidance on what has to happen based on what the staff does on a day-to-day basis and what's happening on a day-to-day level. So it's that fine line. There's been other continuums where I've worked where the continuum was made up of essentially all the service providers. And one jurisdiction I worked in, a county attorney said, county staff can't vote on anything and shouldn't be, so essentially it was, at the time I was the chair of the continuum of care and of service provider and on evaluation committee. Like it was a mess. And that didn't work well either because there were so many inherent conflicts of interest. And then it was me calling the county saying, hey, when is this application coming? What do we need to do? How do we need to plan this? Because I don't have that information because HUD sends it to the legal entity that can, sign the contracts or file the paperwork. So it's, continuum cares are these nebulous bodies.
Could we start? I really meant for this to be a parking lot item. I apologize.
They're fine.
But we're in it now. Could we distribute to the executive committee the interlocal agreement and agree to read it over and kind of come back? Maybe that as a starting point of a conversation. And then because I don't know that all of us, there was a big change made in 2019. I remember those conversations.
So there's two pieces.
Okay.
The interlocal is from like 2012 and maybe 17. There was like a number change.
Okay.
The document that you're thinking of was the governance document.
Oh.
The governance document was one that Hanalea, I think, worked on, or I don't know how she got it done.
She did.
It was right before I came.
Yeah.
That established these committees. And a lot of decision-making was happening in the executive committee. From what I found when I first started, it was like the executive committee was a 2-hour meeting and getting into the weeds of things. And it was a very small group of people making a lot of decisions that was then going to HSAC and getting rubber stamped. And to me, it didn't feel inclusive, and that there wasn't enough room for other thoughts besides who was on the executive committee to get things done. And Jonathan, please weigh in. You've been in these committees longer than I have, but this is my perception. I'm just sharing my perception of how.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's accurate. And I mean, the other thing too that was happening is that things that really should be done in committee, because there was no committee structure, were being brought to HSAC. And so, given the technicalities of a lot of the HUD stuff, I mean, the larger body is not really equipped to look at those things, nor was it necessarily the best time to do that. So I think this was also done partly for, efficiency purposes, so that things like higher level conversations, big picture conversations, which I think more people, are able to participate in, can happen during the HSAC time, so that more time can be freed up for education. Here's what's going on, those kind of things. So that's also part of it. We did look at revising the interlocal, but that is a lot more complicated than the governance charter. I mean, certainly the interlocal has to be approved by the county commissioners, and it's got to be approved by the city council. So I'm not quite sure where all of that, the steam kind of ran out there, but that was a couple, it was right before COVID too.
It was,
and I think
it was like paralleling with COVID. And so I think we just set it down, understandably.
And the reworking of the interlocal and the governance document was being done essentially by the executive committee without input. And it was feeling very, to me, it felt like we were trying to decide who stays on the HSAC and who gets kicked off, versus looking at it as what is the purpose of the HSAC?
Yeah.
And what are the skill sets that you need? And as we've shifted away from the HSAC, which is the governing body, doing what Jonathan said, all the deliberative discussions and decision-making, and shifting that to the committees, you really need more people in the committees doing the work. And you need fewer people at the approval level. But the people at the approval level, you need to figure out what are the right, I don't want to say right skill sets, but what's the right level of knowledge and what are the right skills? What do you need? Sort of like when I use the analogy of when you're building a nonprofit organization and you have a board of directors. What do you need? What skills do you need in those seats? Do you need an attorney? Do you need a finance person? Do you need a marketing and PR person? Do you need somebody who can open doors to wealthy donors? Do you need, what are those needs, and figuring that out? And then what do your committees need? We really need to go through like an iterative process and reimagine what this looks like, because the interlocal, there's so many things in the interlocal that just are obsolete now. And even if we wanted to do them, it doesn't make sense to do them. One of them is doing a annual homeless connect event.
Oh,
Yeah.
It was sort of like what we did for the Bull City Fresh Start. It's like the interlocal requires us to do that every year.
interesting.
But
And
we have
there's no-
outreach. So really that event is obsolete
right. There's
because
no,
we have the great
Yeah.
street outreach teams.
and since 2012, a lot of the way you get connected to services now is through a coordinated entry system versus, hey, here are all these people in one place. So if you're experiencing homelessness, come today and learn about urban ministries, learn about families moving forward, learn about Project Access, learn about Housing for New Hope, and apply for these programs. It's now HUD mandates that you have to do a coordinated entry system. So there's a lot of reasons that things in the interlocal are just obsolete. And the interlocal really needs to be, in my opinion, looking at it, it needs to be set up more as here's how the HSAC works, here's what the HSAC is responsible for doing, and then refer to a governance document that the HSAC itself can update and change without having to go to city council and county commissioners.
Got it.
So a lot of those yearly things that are in the interlocal get shifted to a governance document that the HSAC and the COC can say, oh, we need to change this. And one of the HUD things that we're supposed to do every year is look at our governance document. But our governance document essentially is our interlocal plus our governance document. And there's been shifts in the governance document. It's a mess. And
So it sounds like we could kill two birds with one stone. Like if you send both those out, we can make ourselves more aware and we'll achieve something HUD wants us to do. In all seriousness. So
Yep.
Jonathan likes that. That's performance management. We're going to do it. We can get all our points for that one.
Yep.
But I think that may help us really kind of maybe set a little time in some future meetings to look at some of those pieces, and even at some point maybe come back and look at, because I think, Colin, you've made some good points about lead agency versus other things that you all do, and maybe come back at some point, kind of hell into your point of like, what does exec committee do? What is like these are the things that community development does related to homeless services that seem to relate to this group. Here's why, that kind of thing, like how's authority delegated kind of piece, and where is it coming from? Because I think that would help people understand better a number of things. So I guess in my brain, I'm like, can we read those two documents? I hate that phrase noodle on, but that's what's coming to my head right now. Noodle on what's in there. And then maybe at some point look at this, like what you all do, and how much of it's lead agency and how much of it's other stuff.
And so like an example, like the coordinated entry administrative piece, is the city doing that as a lead agency, or is the city doing that as a city, or is the city doing it because we've got a coordinated entry system as the lead, as the COC has to ensure that ensure compliance and all these things work. And as a COC, are we set up that the COC, without the lead agency doing anything, could ensure that all the policies, procedures, prioritization is happening on a regular basis and facilitating that? So I think that's how the lead agency sort of came in, as on that monitoring stuff. Are we in the weeds? Yes. We're trying to back out of some of the weeds and just trying to ensure that we have a system that's sort of doing, not getting down into the case conferencing level, but when it's time to walk through the prioritization process, that we've got a policy and a procedure, the lead agency sort of lead, or this city at this point leads the discussion on who gets the open slot, because essentially our coordinated entry system has people on the list that if they were doing that, there's an inherent conflict. You have a bias, kind of any nonprofit who's in that meeting has a bias. So you need a neutral group who can sort of go through and say, all right, this is the policy, follow it through, or you let all the nonprofits make that system work. And then you have to have a neutral group come in and do a monitoring and random check at a later date to ensure that all the policies and procedures were followed in a fair and equitable manner.
Good. Sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't mean to create a 20-minute conversation.
You're fine. It was a great conversation. I mean,
We paved the whole parking lot and striped it too, so.
Definitely a worthwhile conversation, Russ. Not a problem.
Definitely.
But yes, I will get the interlocal and governance documents sent out to you all, and we can start sort of parsing out. And that was one of the things we talked about in executive committee, of doing a training for the HSAC of kind of, what is the lead agency? What does the city do? What does the COC do? What does the HSAC do? Who does what and when? So that kind of goes with our agenda. And when do we want to put that on an agenda? Probably, I would suggest, if we want to still think about doing a training on what is the COC, what is the HSAC, what is the city as a funder, what is the city as a lead agency, and how do all these things intersect? We should probably do that at a full COC meeting rather than a regular HSAC meeting.
Do people get training now when they join the HSAC? I was required to attend training when I
We
joined.
have those trainings that you attended are recorded. I don't know that anybody actually goes and watches them. And I'm also not sure that, I think there's probably a better way that we could do that training in a more effective and efficient manner. We just need to think through what that training, what should be included in that training. And I'd like to hear from HSAC members, what do HSAC members feel would be important for us to include in a orientation training versus what we think.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to know what the onboarding processes are for some of the other committees and pieces, because if I'm not mistaken, there's, and I need to check this up, I'm a county appointment and there's a county orientation process, but I don't know that I've heard that there's a city orientation process for just like any city commission versus any county commission. So it'd be interesting to see what other commissions and committees and whatnot are doing at some point.
So many years ago, when I came on, I think some of the orientation to HSAC was done depending on who the lead agency's key staff member was at the time. So when I came on in 2017, Lloyd did an orientation to all new members. And then after that, I'm not quite, it all depends on who was that lead staff member.
The last one, Hanalei and Lloyd, right when I started in 2019 or 2020. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was in 2020 because we were in COVID. The three of us, we were going to do an orientation and record it and save it. And I had a section, Lloyd had a section, Hanalei had a section. And due to the COVID pandemic, I was overloaded and didn't have time to do it. So Hanalei and Lloyd split it. That's the recording that's currently available. From my recollection.
I think the other thing too, and I feel like this is definitely something we revisit every year. Like, how can we like better explain how things work? And it is so complicated. And for me, I have learned the most by just jumping in and doing. And I think that's really got to be emphasized, because that's how I mean, of course I've had orientation, of course I've had presentations, but there's nothing like firsthand knowledge of actually having to do something and then see where you fit in the big picture.
Okay.
All right.
Well, let's
Yeah.
go ahead and finish and get the agenda, and then we can come back, circle back around if we need to.
All right, let me pull up the agenda. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So February, we got a policy and planning update. We need to present about the wish list for approval. And I think all of you were part of that meeting we had earlier this week. I think, was anybody not there? I think you all were there.
I was late, but I was there.
Okay.
I caught the last 15 minutes of it. Unfortunately, I had a meeting that ran over.
Well, the last 15 minutes, you got what the 4 items that are going to be recommended to the HSAC for approval.
You talked about those in the first 15 minutes, right? Because I don't remember hearing what they all were.
Oh, all right. So it's additional supportive service like case managers, 30 to 45 additional full-time case managers. Some of those would be at like kind of a supervisor level, because you can't just dump 30 people into nonprofits without adequate oversight.
Right.
The second item was additional flexible housing vouchers that it could be for short-term rapid rehousing financial assistance. It could be a longer term similar to a housing choice voucher, but not having to run it through DHA and waiting for a voucher from DHA. And those could get paired with that supportive services. So it could create additional PSH if needed. It could just be, here's additional financial assistance for folks. We didn't get into the who does it, how is it done, and what could it be. These are just very high level buckets and trying to determine how many households could be served so that a letter could go to city council and county commissioners for them to consider for the budget. And if they say, oh, here's $100,000, here's $1 million, here's $2 million, we know what we can do. And then the next step would be going through an RFP process. The third item was a updated emergency shelter that would include non-congregate space, medical respite, programs, space, day shelter where folks could shower, collect mail. And the third is the fourth was more affordable housing units. So the first two are probably the easiest to put a dollar value on. The others are more of a putting a pin in things that are wanted and needed as an advocacy role. And I know urban ministries in St. Philip's Church are looking at redeveloping the UMD campus. So, that's a massive undertaking and not likely to, break ground in the next 12 or 24 months. That's a little bit of time. That's my guess. I don't think they'll break ground in 12 to 24 months, but they could, I guess. But we're still in, design phase and concept phase.
So this goes to the HSAC at our February meeting, and assuming they'll approve, then where that letter comes in, you talked about.
Yep. And then the letter would come from the HSAC and would go to the mayor and city council, city manager, and to the county manager and chair of the county's county commissioners and the commissioners as well. So we'd send it both ways because our rough estimate is, probably in the neighborhood of $4 million annually to make that happen. And that's assuming no raises, nothing changes. And how do you make it work? And the tricky part with flexible housing vouchers is, it may be a flat number this year, but does it have to go up in future years? And how do you solve for those inflationary pressures?
Thank you.
So one, Colleen Herbert and the gaps analysis committee is saying they would present in March. So we'll do that. Project Access, Julia Gamble would like to do a medical respite presentation about what is medical respite, and about 10 minutes presentation, 5 minutes for questions, if that's something that the executive committee would like to add to the agenda.
Yeah, it would be good.
That'd be great.
Okay. We also the city was monitored by HUD headquarters for ESG COVID funds. And they specifically looked at our prevention program that was run by Open Table Ministry and Volunteers of America. So we can share the results of that monitoring. And there were 7 findings on things. They're all administrative with those ESG CV funds in terms of, a policy here didn't match a policy here, which didn't match. There were some discrepancies between timelines. The written standard didn't match the written policy and procedure. The written standard for the COC didn't match VOA or Open Tables policy and procedure. And the city didn't, keep in mind, the city didn't go and monitor and review all these. The COC needs to have standard forms for this, for a standard rental agreement form, a standard certain forms. So there's a lot of administrative cleanup that we're going to need to do over the next 12 to 18 months, and a lot of monitorings that have to happen. And we're working on our response to HUD on these monitorings findings to ensure we clean them up. And the goal for at least the procedural ones is to get those cleaned up by the end of this calendar year, because we anticipate the next round of ESG funds that will go into contract starting January 1st of 2024. So we want to make sure that, issues that we had in this, we get it cleaned up so that the new round of ESG funding starts on really solid, clean footing. And a lot of it was, we'll share all the details of it. It's a lot of, unless we were embedded with the nonprofits, I'm not sure how we would have been able to do everything. Reevaluate things about reevaluations. So we'll get that cleaned up. But we did want to share that with the HSAC.
And I assume obviously the group, the agencies are already aware, so it's not like they're going to find out in the middle of. Okay.
Yeah, no, I've forwarded them the letters, and I'm asking for help on them because one of the issues was reevaluations, and there wasn't a standard reevaluation that had to happen every 6 months. And I was like, I'm not sure that anybody was in the program longer than 6 months. So we're in the process of going through and trying to figure out how many people. So if anybody is in rapid rehousing, ESG, rapid housing or prevention for 6 months or longer requires a standard reevaluation form. And there isn't a standard reevaluation form. We also have to have a standard form that everybody has to go through and ensure that they fill out, proving that without this assistance, this household would not be able to access anything. So this is going to put a lot of extra work on case managers and agencies on the go forward basis to get in compliance with the HUD rules. And the HUD headquarters went over this with a fine-tooth comb. They had eight or nine people going over our stuff for 2 weeks and examined 40 or 50 files. So it was not a light touch by any stretch of the imagination. And even after we got through the 2-week process, they were still going through files. It took them about 2 or 3 months to get us the letter. Questions on that? Okay. How much do we want? About 15 minutes on wish list approval? How long do you think we need for that?
That should be fine.
Also planning. I may have to do, I don't know if Sharita will be back yet, but she might be, so. That could take 15 to, I don't know how long that'll take.
Depends on how many questions you get.
Try and keep it to 15 minutes. It may be less. Anything else that you all can think of that we need to go
Early
over?
Point in time count update, and I would imagine.
Sure.
Is it too early for that?
We won't have, all the numbers probably won't be done by that. It usually takes a couple months to get all the data reconciled between all the data sources and deduplicated. But I think, Russ, would you feel comfortable working with Lloyd to do a pit debrief sharing? You're muted, but I think you said yes.
I said yes.
Okay.
I mean, we could even, if there's not much to report, if they're, depending on, we're after ESG-CV monitoring, I mean, we could even do a quick, what do they call it? Best things next time exercise of like what worked well and what do you want to see improve next time? To again, just create some atmosphere for feedback. But
Absolutely. You want to block this out? Sort of a pit debrief.
yeah, and I'd treat it as accordion time in case the thing before it goes long.
Mhm.
We'll be prepared to flex.
Okay. Okay. So this will be sort of put in 15 to 30 minutes.
Oh
Yeah.
no, not 30.
Well, you could do breakout sessions.
But we don't have to go that whole hog, but we'll see.
But not everybody in the HSAC was at the pit count, so pit debrief. All right, so I'll put Russ. Lloyd. So you and Lloyd can work on sort of figuring out some of those details. Anything else? Here into March. We'll do the this will be Jonathan, you'll be up for performance management in March.
That'd be a good timing for me because I think we're close to starting the spring evaluations. So I don't know the timeline yet on that, but I definitely wouldn't have as much of an update this month if I had to give one. So March is better.
We can also share the special NOFO update. That'll probably be like 5 minutes. That was the NOFO that we submitted for unsheltered. We just heard back from HUD that Durham was not funded. However, North Carolina Balance of State did receive funding. So well, it's not good for us, at least, you know, rural community and is getting some money to help unsheltered in more rural areas.
So that was the only thing at all that got funded in North Carolina?
I haven't looked through it. That's what Lloyd flagged on the email that he sent to me. He said, well, we didn't get funded, but we can congratulate balance of state. So I haven't gone and looked through. I haven't had time.
I mean, that was the honest expectation for most of the people working on it the whole way through. So
Mhm.
it's disappointing, but not surprising.
Yeah, we're not surprised. We thought we wrote a good application, and it was good. Well, eventually at some point we may get a debrief to find out how and why we didn't score well or what we scored, and we may
That'd
have
be great.
scored very well. They just ran out of money by the time they got down to our score,
Mhm.
because that's kind of the way it worked. And we were already starting at a 30%, 30-point deficit from our biggest out of a 100-point score. If you had a 10,000 or more persons experiencing homelessness, you got 30 points. Durham, unfortunately, fortunately, our pit count at the time was only like 350. So that's the good news. But on the scoring thing, you get 0 points for that. All right, that's all I've got on this, unless you can think of anything else we need to go through. Nothing else? All right,
Mm-mm.
can do that. The other one that, if I remember correctly, I believe, if I remember correctly, the executive committee appoints HSAC members to join subcommittees. Jason Brenner from DHA has said that he would be willing to serve on the policy and planning committee. I think it would be a help to have somebody from DHA on that committee. Do you all want to approve appointing him to the policy and planning committee?
Make a motion to approve Jason Brenner to the Policy and Planning Committee.
All right.
I second that motion.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so he said he would do it. He may have conflicts at times due to court and things, but he said he would do his best to be a participant, and also having him on there would, I think, officially open up an extra COCA liaison seat. But we may not have that. I have to go back and look, because having him on helps, but I don't know if it'll balance with Drew Cummings leaving that seat. So we may be okay to add that COC liaison to that position. And we can put that out there. So let me go double check all those things. All right, that's all I've got. Madam Chair.
Anyone have any, we got 11 minutes left in our time. Do we need to circle back to anything that we were talking about earlier? Well, if not, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Very good.
Good.
Sorry, I'm taking notes.
Oh, I'll second.
All right.
Liza will second. All
There
right.
you go.
We'll get you an interlocal and governance shortly.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you probably somewhere around in the county and the city doing something else.
There you go.
All right. Thanks all. Have a
Take care,
great day.
everyone.
That's good.
All right. Bye.